Hi everybody, I am TheReadingTortie and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be doing part 2 of the 4-part book review for A Column of Fire. I will link part 1 in the description box below, which covers synopsis and characters. Part 2, this video, will be covering setting and conflict. Looking at my clipboard. Okay, cool. So A Column of Fire is the third in the Kingsbridge series, and it's a great book. You guys should check it out. It's giant. So, it takes place from 1558 to 1620. So there's a whole heck of a lot of places that we go to in between those almost, 1552? Man, almost 100 years. So, yeah, it's a long time. The book is set in 1558 England and Kingsbridge and France, mainly. While the book does take us throughout the world with the sailing and adventures of all the characters, sailing for Barney, but Ned, Willard, Sylvie, Pierre, they all travel a lot. So there's a lot more travel in this book than there were in the previous 2 books. And a whole lot of sailing stuff. So, pretty cool. The characters go everywhere, and the story mainly sticks around England, Kingsbridge, and France. Europe and the Vatican and Italy are also brought up, but we never really go visit them. Neither do we go visit Scotland. Oh no, I forgot Mary Queen of Scotland in the characters list. Mary Queen of Scotland, y'all, too. What a sad story. Okay, so the political intrigue mainly revolves around the royal families, who is Catholic, who is Protestant, and the Vatican trying to maintain its hold on Europe when Protestantism is taking off. And really the biggest issue isn't even faith. None of that is what really drives it. It's the Vatican trying to keep control of Europe, which is terrible, and keeping control of all the crowns, since Elizabeth I is Protestant. We really get to see the courts of England and France as they develop and change throughout the book and over the long period the book captures. The people in the courts themselves become a setting in it of themselves. Because the book is so grand and the story is so vast, we get to see so much of the people and their lives. The places themselves aren't the only settings, but the people and their energies also become a setting. So I think I say that a lot about certain things, that while obviously the physical setting is a place, the physical place is a setting, the people themselves create their own settings in their own worlds, and their house becomes a setting so crucial. And their palaces, their sheds, it all is so important. Ken Follett is one of the biggest masters of it's the really tiny things that count. Like that shed over there that looks completely inconspicuous, that's going to be the scene for one of the worst murders in history and stuff like that. So everything is a setting. The people themselves are setting. It's just so wonderful and fluid. So I love it. The setting is very immersive, alive, dirty, so dirty, and real. While there are no real plagues outbreaking in this one, like we had in World Without End, it was still just gross, the way it was in the 1580s and or in poverty. Everything is written in a way that you are there in the scene with the dirtiness and the disease and the betrayal. The halls are exotic, gilded, massive, gaudy, so gaudy. The costumes that they describe are amazing. And you really get the feel that you are there when, the somber Protestants go in with their black coats, and then you see all of these, gaudy French Catholics are in their huge rings and these gold stuff everywhere. So it's really alive. The fanaticism almost makes the words scramble on the page and take an energy of its own, as the book almost spasms in your hands, because everybody is fanatical, not about their faith, but about controlling Europe and control and power. And a lot of stuff that drives this is power and greed, which is, the oldest reason in the book for causing wars. We've done it for ages. It doesn't change. As Ken Follett characters do, they are all so grand and complete because of the amount of time that we spend with them, almost 1,000 pages. Their minds, their halls are all settings within settings within settings. The smallest unit is in their own mind, with the largest, grandest unit being the international scheme, the international stage of the world. So I had to read that one because, sorry guys, because that wasn't even an appropriate description of the setting. The setting is great. While there may be some historical inaccuracies with the settings, there might have been some timeline shifted, which I will cover in the next video. Kind of, not really in depth because I'm not a historian. The settings are beautiful, realistic. You don't ignore. Nothing is ignored here. Everything is accounted for. There was actually a part where Ned is talking to one of the ultra Protestants of Kingsbridge that he doesn't quite like because of his extreme tendencies, and Ned is a very measured, level-headed character. So Ned's talking to him, and he's eating salmon or some sort of fish, and he just flicks a portion of the salmon to his cat. That didn't need to be there. We didn't need to know that his cat was there and that he gave it salmon. But it adds a little tweak of realism, and suddenly we see him even just so natural. I think it adds a little layer of brightness and crisp clarity to the actions taking place, because that scene stood out so much for me. And I saw in that action what I am missing in my own writing. And I'm like, I need what that action represents in my own writing, because that is what gives the setting of Ken Follett's books the vibrancy. Is that a word? Yeah. Okay. The just the extra bit of oomph, essentially, that makes his settings and his characters and his stories such masterpieces. As the Washington Post says, Follett is a master. That he is. So, the setting was really cool. Wait a second. Wait. Oh. I'm glad I wrote this down. This is why I need to write things down. Okay. So, speaking of the setting, there are little Easter eggs throughout the entire book. Kind of like little nods to the other two worlds that built what we are now. So I'm really happy that we get to see little like hellos to the characters and the lives that built the world that these characters are, being rambunctious in. So there's the mention of Merthin's Bridge, the Prior Philip's tomb. Prior Philip's like way back there. Jack's Cathedral. Jack. I love Jack. Karis's Angel and her hospital. So while you can read this book as a standalone and not miss anything, because of the fact that the book is like 200 years after World Without End, I love that the other books and the other characters are not forgotten. They're not looked over like, oh, just a second thought in passing. No. They're important parts of the story, and they're little happy little nuggets for me as the reader, because I love those two books so much. So to see little references to them, I'm just like, yes, oh my gosh, it's so cute, and it just adds a little sparkle to the story. Even though the story is like brilliant and amazing and crisp and bright and colory, there's an extra little sparkle when I think about Karis's Angel. Karis's Angel in particular, just Merthin loved Karis so much, and I love it. But we're not talking about them right now. Okay. So because I'm also a scrub, I didn't print out the conflict part. So I'm reading it off my phone. I'm sorry. I feel terrible about this. So the conflict is very multifaceted, and it goes from tiny conflicts of character versus character to the grand conflicts of country versus country. So the main ones that we consistently follow, that I'm sure that I will miss some, are Ned versus Rollo. From the very beginning, it was like Ned versus Rollo. Marjorie versus her family versus Earl Swithin. So poor Marjorie against her fate that unfortunately she has no say in. Ned versus the radicals of either side. Ned is just, let's keep it at peace. Pierre versus his status versus the Guise. The Guise are very arrogant, proud family, and they'll be damned if they let someone like Pierre, who comes from nothing, become someone in their family. So while Pierre is scummy and questionable, he does fight a really long battle with his status and earning his place in the Guise household. Then there's Pierre and the Guise versus the crowns and the nobles, because, you know, everybody's trying to take advantage of the fact that France doesn't have a very powerful or steady monarchy because of the unhealthy kings that have reigned. So there's just everybody's always fighting for control of the crown. And Pierre and the Guise are very powerful contenders in that fight. So it becomes Pierre and the Guise versus the crown and the nobles. That eventually doesn't go well. Sylvie versus Pierre. That one's rough. That one really solidifies Sylvie in my mind as one of the strongest characters ever, because she doesn't let something like that get to her. And keep in mind, Sylvie is Protestant and Pierre fights for the ultra-Catholics. And they are thrown together because Pierre is trying to win favor with the Guise, and he will do anything to get it. Sylvie versus the ultra-Catholics that are out to slaughter all the Protestants in France. Gosh, don't do that. So that was awful. I think it was the Bartholomew Massacre that was when Ned and Sylvie met or something like that. It was just terrible. So Sylvie versus all the ultra-Catholics. Elizabeth versus Mary of Scotland and Europe. So Elizabeth isn't really in an open war with Mary of Scotland, but all of Mary's followers, because she is Catholic, are trying to overthrow Elizabeth and assassinate her to put Mary on the throne. The Scots don't like Mary, so poor Mary is kind of the bad end of the stick on either front. And Elizabeth versus all of Europe, because Europe wants to stay Catholic. It's still predominantly Catholic. France is the only one that, although it is still Catholic, preaches religious tolerance. So everybody is either ultra-Catholics, ultra-Protestants, and the ultra-Catholics outnumber the ultra-Protestants, which there shouldn't be any radicals to begin with. We should all be, like, hey, religious tolerance. But this is the 1580s, and that's not a thing. So, yeah. Not to mention Elizabeth versus the corrupt Vatican. My gosh, that's like a whole other thing. If you guys want a topic of discussion on the corruption of the Vatican in the 1500s, let me know, because I absolutely love the Borgias, which are like the embodiment of Vatican Catholic corruption, and I love them so much. So, if you guys want a side topic of discussion about the corruption of the Vatican during the 1500s, let me know and I will happily record that. England versus Europe and the Vatican, and then Catholics versus Protestants at its end. I'm sure I missed some, but as of right now, those are the main conflicts that we follow. So those are a lot of conflicts, and none of them are simple. I think the simplest are Ned versus Rollo, and even then, it takes like 900 pages for them to resolve their problems. And I mean, they're huge influencers in the wars and stuff. So there is not a simple conflict here, even though it's character versus character. There are so many tiny details in it that just makes it at least 50 pages worth of charting for this. So yeah, the setting of the conflict. That's that. I guess this will be it for this video. I mean, not every video has to be like 30 minutes long, but I don't really know what to say about the conflicts other than, dang, they're crazy. Pierre is crazy, and there's just so much to talk about that I'll end up rambling, and then we'll be here an hour later, and I'm like, oh, dang, oops. So I'll just leave it at that. If you guys want to talk about the conflicts, the setting, historicism, the crazy Vatican, if anybody wants to talk about the Borgias as a side note, let me know. I'll talk about the Borgias all day. Obsessed with the Borgias. Let me know And depending on how much conversation goes on around this book, I might start a whole section on Goodreads so that we can all have this amazing discussion over this amazing book that deserves a lot of discussions. I'm pretty sure we can write a good dissertation on everything that takes place in this book. So that will be it for this video. Next video will be the plot and historicism. Please don't like hold me too hard on historicism. I'm a rookie and an amateur historian. So I might get some stuff wrong. I might forget to mention certain things. So please don't crucify me if I get it wrong. But that's for the next video. So thank you guys for stopping by, and be safe, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!